Okay, so starting case problem 3, the first thing I want to do is, just like the instructions are kind of going to tell me, is I'm going to look at the HTML that's already been written and just kind of get an idea for what these pages have. So that as I'm writing some CSS in the future steps, I'm not writing blind. I kind of know a little bit what it's about. So there's nothing in the head. They don't have any CSS in there. I can assume that step 1 is going to be to link my CSS in here, probably write a viewport meta tag. First thing inside the body, there's a header with a logo and a navigation. So T5 is all about flex boxes, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to apply a flex box to this header and the navigation. Then there's what's next is an article with some phone number and email links at the top, some paragraphs and images in them. There's a section in here with the ID of Spotlight. So I can assume, based on the other case problems that I've done, that this is probably going to be a flex box, and I'm going to put this spotlight maybe to one side and give it a kind of an aside view, perhaps. We'll see if that's what it really happens. There is an aside right here after the article. So that's probably going to be a sidebar, and it has a bunch of information about what looks like upcoming events. In the mobile view, this is probably going to be pushed down to the bottom or hidden altogether. And in the desktop view, it's probably going to be on the side as a sidebar. And then I have the footer here. The footer is a larger footer. These are have gotten much more common out in a lot of websites, especially official websites for larger corporations or for any municipalities, and that really large footers have gotten common in the past few years, with a lot of links in that to like contact us and tech support and things of that nature. So large footers are getting more common. I like to see that in the examples here. Have a look at the style sheet that they give us. There's absolutely nothing in there, so I know I'm going to have to do all that. All right, so moving along in here, I do want to read the summary because I don't want to just blindly answer these questions. They're going to make a lot more sense if I know what it is I'm working on. And I have this picture of the goal. Okay, so this is what the website currently looks like. It's basically content with no definition, no CSS. And here's the goal for the mobile view and the goal for the desktop view. So this is the aside with all the upcoming events that I saw. I expected it was going to be a sidebar. This looks like the spotlight area, this gray area. Here's the larger footer, the header with the horizontal navigation at the top. And there's no horizontal navigation on the mobile. This is probably going to be a pop-out navigation. And looks like something changed right here with all these images. That's different. We'll see that when we get to it. And then all the coloring of everything changed down here. So this will be an interesting one. It'll be nice. So moving ahead, I'm going to read the summary so that I can understand this one. I'm not done case problem number 3 yet, so this will be fun for me. Cauli Wood Gallery. Sophia Fonte is the manager of Cauli Wood. It's like Hollywood, but it's not. Cauli Wood Gallery, an art gallery in coffee shop located in Sedona, Arizona. She's approached you for help in redesigning the gallery's website to include support for mobile devices and tablets. Your first project will be to redesign the site's homepage following the principles of responsive design. And those principles are, we're going to do mobile first, and we're going to have desktop last. Okay, we're going to target those devices in order. A preview of the homepage shown above, we looked at that. A style sheet and graphics files have already been created for you. Your job is to write the HTML markup. Maybe that's different. Cool. Instructions. This review assignment contains interactive instructions, reading. That's kind of the same on everywhere. Yes, that's the same stuff on every assignment. Now we're going to set up our document. Go to the home.html and the styles file and enter your name and date. I'm going to skip that part. In the styles file, we're going to use the import rule to import the designs.css. So there is some design.css that kind of like the default design stuff. So we're going to do @import. That's what they've asked us to do. Import the designs.css. URL. Oops. CW designs.css. Okay. Now, let's see if they want to do anything else. It doesn't say to do this import rule for screens only. One of the previous examples did that. This one just says to do the import. So we're not even going to write screen only. Right, so I've imported that. There should be a lot of changes on this step. No. Oh, no changes, because although I've imported this into the style sheet, I haven't actually included the style sheet into the HTML. Go to the home.html file and insert a meta element for the viewport. So the viewport meta tag, we are always using the same one. Meta name equals viewport and content equals, there's no difference in here, right? Yeah, they don't do anything different. So width, type it correctly, width equals device width, comma, initial scale equals 1.0. Okay, this is the same viewport meta tag that we're always using. We've never used a different one. And meta tags do not have any content like image tags. Okay, image tags, you can't put anything inside the image. Meta tags, you can't put anything inside them. Everything is typed right in its actual meta area. It has a name and it has content. So that means it doesn't have an opening tag and a closing tag. It's a self-closing single tag. So we put the slash at the end of the one tag. Same thing like images. We have an image down here. It's self-closing. It doesn't have an open and a close like everything else, like this header. It's open, then it has stuff inside of it, and then we close it. Meta tags don't have that. So we have that. Also, create links to the reset and the style CSS styles. Take time to study the structure of the document. I did look at the structure of the document already. So now I'm going to link the CSS. We want to do the reset and the style. I'm going to do the reset before the style. href equals, I'm going to leave it blank for just a moment. Relationship equals style sheet. And the reason I left it blank is because I'm going to copy and paste this text in here because I have two of them. And I'm trying to not repeat myself, right? So I've linked the reset and the styles.css. And I have my viewport meta tag. So now I should see a big difference on this page, now that I actually have a style sheet, and I do, very big difference. It's a really long page. Something going on with this menu here, right? This menu is huge. So I think that's one of the things we're going to have to fix, right? So I finished this task. I haven't done much yet. I've just included what was already given to me. Good. All right, so of course it accepts that. Now, next step where I actually have to write some real code instead of just including what was already given to me. At the bottom of the home page is a navigation list with the ID bottom. What's going on here? Yep, that's inside the footer. There's a navigation list in the footer. Let's have a look at what it looks like. Right now it's just a straight list, but if we remember from the example, they had it broken into 3 columns, I think. And they do, they have 3 unordered lists here. Navigation with ID bottom, containing several unordered list elements. So Sophia wants these unordered list elements laid out side by side. Open the style sheet and create a style rule for the bottom navigation list, displaying it as a flexbox row, no wrapping. Set the justify content property, that one's new, so that the flex items are centered along the main axis. And then in blue here, have a note to be sure to include the WebKit browser extension in my flex styles. Okay, so we'll do that. We have ID bottom in the footer, navigation, and that's going to be turned into a flex box. I don't see any specific code yet. Here's the code for the items in the flex box. So we'll do the flex box first. Okay, and this is general styles for all devices because they did not tell us to do this for only mobile or for tablet. So ID bottom. All right, now the answer from the book wants me to be a little bit more specific, but ID tags are pretty specific already. So we'll see if we can get away with just using the ID tag. We should be able to. ID tags are very specific. Display flex, because it's a flex box. It's the only way to do it. And flexbox row with no wrapping. Flex flow equals row and no wrap. And then justify content property so the flex items are centered along the main axis. So I'm going to go back to the complete guide to Flexbox and look at the justify content, see what my options are. I think I know which one it's going to be, but I want to check. All right, justify content, my options are, here's the picture. There it is. Very slow. My options are flex start, flex end, start end, left, right, center, space between, and space around. So they have asked me to do, so the flex items are centered along the main axis. And so that's probably going to be center. Okay, so we'll type that in and see if that is, whoops, justify content. See if that's going to be acceptable. We do need to write the WebKit for all these, and we write the WebKit for each one before the traditional version. WebKit flex. WebKit flex flow equals row and no wrap. And WebKit justify content is center and a typo. Okay, so 3 things we set and 3 WebKits we set. This is not the end of this step. We also need to define flex values for each of the unordered list elements that are in the bottom area. So I want to be at least as specific as I just was. So in ID bottom, I want to target the UL and give it a flex value of, what do they say it's going to be? They don't say anything about grow, and they do say it should be able to shrink. So if they don't say anything about grow, I'm going to leave the grow at the default. The default grow value is 0. They say it can shrink, but they don't say how much. So I'm just going to pick 1, which is also the default for shrink. And they do say a value for the basis as 150 pixels. Again, I'm going to do the WebKit version for this. 0, 1, 150 pixels. All right, and that is all of this. Let's have a look at what we have in here. Okay, took a minute to refresh, but here's our 3 unordered lists, and we put those inside of this flex box. If I were to come down, I'm in Firefox, so I can click this Flexbox button. And now that we have a flex area that has some extra space, hopefully you can see this graded area on either side. So we said justify content center, and that's what this is all about. We said these unordered list items should not be able to grow. So they won't grow to expand the full width of the container. And the container is set to center these items, so there is empty space on both the left and the right. And then we have the purple lines around each block. They're the same size because we told them the basis value would be 150 pixels. And each one, because it can't grow, is actually 150 pixels wide. So we should be able to get this check mark. I don't think I skipped anything. Oh, I missed it. Let's look. A 1.71% difference. Wow. It doesn't accept that small difference. The current one is this, and the solution is this. So that's odd because I typed in exactly what they did. Justify content center. Well, actually, they did not put the WebKit in there for the books. with that one piece of code. Okay, so there's a problem with MindTap on this particular part anyhow. MindTap tells you, be sure to include the WebKit browser extension, WebKit browser extension for all of your Flex styles, and specifically for this one right here. Okay, the answer key in the book has forgotten to put the WebKit in there. I remembered to do it, and then they told me I was wrong. So this particular one, this is the first time I've seen it happen, actually, that the book has forgotten to put one in there. And so now I'm forced to also forget to do that. And let's see what the difference is. Probably no difference on my browser because yeah, no difference on my browser because my browser is not a WebKit browser at the moment, and it's not the MindTap browser. So we can do that. And really what kind of clued me into that when I was looking at the picture is I saw these things all jumbled together in the solution picture. And so I figured out that they must not have their basis width set properly, because the default basis width, if you remember, the default is auto, okay? And they asked us to do 150, and we set 150, it's gonna look like this, just like mine does. If I were to change this and set it to auto, it will look more like the solution example. See, now it looks like that. So I could tell the MindTap made a mistake on that. Okay, moving on. Did everybody see what I did there? It's actually, it doesn't happen too often. MindTap generally doesn't have these mistakes, but I looked at what my code visually looked like according to MindTap, and I looked at what their solution they wanted it to look like, and I noticed their solution is actually wrong, and I had to work backwards and kind of debug theirs and figure out what they did wrong. So I can see from this picture that these unordered lists down here, I know it's very small, but these unordered lists don't have the correct width that they were asking for. And because they don't have the correct width, that's how I figured out where their mistake was. Okay, moving on to the next one. Hopefully that is the only mistake. I'm actually going to write this one down and see if we can't get this fixed in the future. Page 3. Okay. We'll see if I can send a message to MindTap and get them to fix it for the future. Moving on to the next one. Now we have the mobile media query. This will be great. Sophia wants more highly contrasting colors when the page is displayed on a mobile device. Okay, this is useful because mobile devices are frequently used outside in the sunshine. So more contrasting colors makes it easier to read your phone when you're outside. We should have done that in case problem 2 when we were on a golf course, because those people will be outside. This is an art gallery. Create a media query for mobile screen devices with a maximum width of 480 pixels. Within that media query, well, okay, let me pause right here and let's just create the media query. At media, screen, and I'm going to put in my curly braces and everything and make sure that I have that before I forget it. Max width of 480 pixels. Okay. I do like the way that they word this for the mobile one. They word it every time and they say maximum width of 480 pixels. They do make it easy for us. Okay. All right, so we have this. All right, so I have my media query written, and now it says within that media query, I need to write all of this, right? A style rule that sets the font color. That's right, because we want high contrast. The font color of all the body text to this RGB value. That looks like a light gray to me. Yeah, light gray, and sets the body background to this color, which looks like a very dark gray. So we can do that right inside my media query. Now I like to tab over so that it's easier for me to read. Body, all the text in the body, color equals RGB 211 for the red, 211 for the green, 211 for the blue, and that should be a light gray color. And then the background color, technically we can write just the word background as the shorthand. I would advise against writing just the word background when you only want to do the color, and that is because it sometimes is the case where you have multiple CSS rules, because you're going to have multiple CSS pages, and if you write the background color or any of the other CSS pages, write the background color, and then one of the other CSS uses the shorthand to write the background color, the override between those two is going to be potentially not what you wanted it to be. So if you only want to write background color, I would suggest you specifically write background color. If you want to use the shorthand because you're doing multiple things in there, then by all means do that. Okay, so I'm going to target specifically the background color of the body on mobile screens. And then I'm still in the same step here. Sophia also wants to reduce the clutter in the mobile version of the homepage. Hide the following elements from mobile users. She wants to hide the aside, hide any image that's within the article element, and hide the section spotlight image. Okay. And we can do this all with one targeted CSS rule. We can do aside, oops, comma, image within the article. So we actually write article space image. So that's images that are inside the article. And then section ID spotlight. And we're going to hide those. The best way to hide it is display none. Display none is going to completely take it out of flow with the rest of the document, give it a size of 0, and not show it to anyone. It's completely hidden. There's not even space left for it. There's 3, right? Aside, images that are in the article, and section spotlight. I would say that the ID spotlight by itself is good enough, but the books won't. MindTap specifically told us to use this one, so I'm going to go ahead and type that full thing in there. Right. Then go around and see if I can get that checked off. I did not. Let's see, what is my difference? Current and difference is very tall. Ah, the color looks a little different here, right? And that looks a little different. That's very different. Maybe I missed something. My values are correct. Let's have a look at our page at that size. Okay. Yeah, that's what it looks like. And what MindTap wants it to look like. We want to hide our images. What's this? Oh, this has happened to me before. My changes haven't taken place. There's something. Got to refresh this. I think that it's not working because I went back and forth in my sandbox. Okay. Type that one more time here. Same thing, body, color, background, color, and then we had aside, article, image, and section, spotlight, display none. So something happened, I think, with my sandbox, because I saw this little red mark here. It didn't properly save If I refresh this now, and I scroll down, now I am getting this background color. So I don't think I did it wrong. I just think that the sandbox got mixed up a little. Let's find out. Yeah, that's all it was. So the sandbox got mixed up. If that happens to you, you'll see your file up here is going to have a little red dot, and I think the text was also red for the file name. And that's a clue from MindTap that there was an error in loading that page or in saving that page. So I had to refresh my page. It's a good idea to be safe and copy and paste your code into a text editor just in case you lose it. I did lose a little bit of mine. Luckily, it was just the one step. And then I put it back in and everything was fine after that. So this one's done. Let's go to the next step. Where did I leave off? Right here. Mobile navigation list is the next step. At the top of the web page is a navigation list with ID top. For mobile devices, display the unordered list element within this navigation list as a flexbox row with wrapping. For each list item within this unordered list element, set the font size to 2.2 EMs, set the list items by setting the flex values to 1 for grow and shrink, and 130 pixels for the basis value. So that's a lot of stuff. Let's break that down a little bit. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. Navigation list of top for mobile devices, display the UL element within this as a flexbox row with wrapping. Okay, one step at a time. Let's get the top UL element in it. Okay, we look at the code here, the top UL element. This is like the top navigation. Okay. So the top UL element is going to be a flexbox with row and wrapping. Okay, display flex. Now it's a flexbox, and flex flow is set to row and wrap. Okay, and we want to do the WebKit version for each of these as well. WebKit flex. And WebKit flex. I copied and pasted that and added the WebKit to it. That's the first half of this step. And then for each list item within that UL, so each list item within it would be top UL LI. We can be more specific by saying an LI that's a direct child. In the event that we had a multi-leveled list or a two-dimensional list, we would be targeting only the first dimension, only the top level. For each item in here, set the font size to 2.2 EMs, 2.2 EM. What an EM is 1 EM is going to be equal to whatever the font size is set to. So 1 EM is equal to no change. 2.2 EMs is 2.2 times as large as the current default for that element. So if I had a series of parents and child elements and I told them all to be 2.2 EM, they would get 2.2 times larger each time because it is cumulative. It adds up every time. It's just 2.2 larger, and then when you get to the child element, it's 2.2 larger again. and again, if I were to do this successively into a bunch of nested children. We're just doing the one, so the normal, whatever the normal size is for this item, we're going to be 2.2 times that. The normal is probably 16 pixels, which would make ours somewhere a little bit larger than 32. Let's see. The flex grow and shrink to 1 and basis of 130. So flex 130 pixels. And I'm going to double check that MindTap actually remembered to write the WebKit for this, because remember earlier they forgot. The answer key does have it, so they didn't forget this time. That's good. I'm going to copy and paste and just add the word WebKit with the dashes. Okay, so that's this whole step. We turned the top unordered list to a flexbox, and the items inside of it, we gave this double font size, 2.2 EMs, and we gave them a flex, grow and shrink, and basis size. So this is the top menu. If I come up here and refresh, I get a huge change. Oh no, not as huge. Something is funny with this top header. Top, where's the top? Things aren't being displayed. They're there, but they're kind of hidden. So I think we still have to fix that in the future. Let's see if we can get checked off for this step. Okay, we can do that. The next step, mobile navigation list items. Mobile navigation list items. We're still in the mobile area. Under the mobile layout, the 6 list items in the top navigation list should appear as square blocks. They currently do, we just can't see them. All right, if we were to click in the page inspector, they are 6 pretty square, not 100% square, 160 by 174.4 in size. But 6 squares, we just can't see what's in them because it's all white right now. So they should appear as square blocks with different background images. Using the selector nav top ul li colon nth of type, okay, and the nth of type we put in parentheses, and we can pick which number that is. So the nth of type is going to be the first item of that type, and we're going to have to do the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth as well. So we'll have to target each one using that. This is a much simpler way of targeting each of them, because we won't have to say, we won't have to put an ID tag in all of them. We won't have to target them using that or using unique class names for all of them. We can just say the first one of that type, it's in that area. So we're going to find, go to the top nav, the UL, the LI, and then the first LI, the second LI, the third LI, and so on. And then we don't have to have unique names for each of them. So it'll be a little tedious. We have to do it 6 times, but it's more convenient than actually putting unique names in each of them. Create a style rule that changes the background to the background image. Image 1, center the background image with no tiling. Size it so the entire image is contained within the background. Repeat the previous step for the next 5 list items using the same general format. So use image 2 for the second, image 3 for the third, and so on. So let's write this rule first. And they said, they've given us the rule, nav item ID top unordered list inside of that, an li inside of that, and then this selector nth of type, and the number for nth, that we're using a little bit of math here, right? Some algebra. Nth of type is the first item of that type. And they've told us to do the background. We'll use the shorthand for background so we can do everything all in one line. The image is URL CW image 01.png. Okay, that's the URL for the image of item 1. And they said center the background image with no tiling. So we'll type in center for the background position. Size it so the entire image is contained within the background. Contain is the keyword for the background size. We can do all this separate as well. And then no tiling, that's going to be no repeat is the keyword for that. So all this in one line or on multiple lines. Background image URL CW image 01.png. Background position center. Okay, that's centered horizontally and centered vertically. Background size, contain. Cover and contain are two background sizes that are frequently used. They're very useful. I see a question I'll get to just a moment. Background size, cover, and contain. Contain is going to take that background image, and in whatever the dimensions of the object are, it will contain it both horizontally and vertically. So the height of the background image will be no larger than the height of the element, and the width of the background image will be no larger than the width of the element. It is not going to change the aspect ratio of the image. You can do that by other means, but background size contain will keep the same aspect ratio, and it will shrink the image as much as needed so that it is fully contained within the boundaries. With this method, you may get some blank space either on the sides if the element is wider than the background image, or on top. Sorry, I said that backwards. You'll get blank area on the sides if the element is taller and it needs to shrink this way. And you'll get blank area on the top and bottom if the element is too wide. The background image is too wide compared to the element, and it needs to shrink this way. So it will be contained. You won't get any cutoff edges, anything like that. On the flip side of that, the opposite end of the coin is background size cover. What this one will do is pick the larger of the two dimensions and make sure that that background image fully covers without any blank space all the way around. And so if the background image is a portrait size image, for example, and you have a square, the top and the bottom will get cut off because it's going to grow horizontally in order to fill that space 100%. And if your background image is a landscape and you have a square image, it will cut off the sides in order to fill vertically all that space. So they've asked us to do specifically contain. Okay, so we can do this all with the shorthand background, or we can do it all in one. I'm going to comment out the shorthand and leave this all in one and quickly refresh and see what this is going to look like. All right, so I have my first one taken care of right here. And now I can see there is text in there, but it's white. And without a background, I can't see what that is. So now I have this. I'll pause the video and direct your question and then come back and do the other ones. Okay, so we've done the first one and we can see what that looks like. We have our first item in the navigation and has its background image. And now we need to set all 6 of them. To do that, okay, we're just going to copy this. We've done it once. We're going to copy it and paste it 5 more times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. 2, well, let me type in the numbers. 2. All we need to do is change the image number in all these. Everything else is the same. Oh, 3. 4. And 5. Whoops. 5, 5, 6, 6, 6. Let me double check that I didn't miss it. Oh, I skipped one right here. Got an extra. Okay, nth of type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and all the values are in here. Okay. That looks pretty good, but that's kind of a lot of code. We can simplify this a little bit. If I were to copy this first one and say all of these list items, elements are now going to get, I can even leave the background image and then say background position, center, center, background size is contain. What I can do then is all this is going to repeat on all of them. I said all the list items inside the top navigation are going to share these CSS rules. And then, because CSS cascades, that's what the C stands for. Then I can shorten this up and just come back and say, okay, this is, I don't even have to put the image in the first one, but I'll take that out. Okay, they share this in common, and then each one just has a different file for the background image. So I can shorten my code up a little bit. And if I refresh the page, they all look the same, they just have different images. They all have the same, if I click on any one of these, background position and background size in my inspector is set for all of them. Okay, I think that's the whole step. This is a much more convenient way to size all of these, because then if future me ever has to change the background position or the background size, or maybe add something that's the same for all of these, I can type it in one spot right here and then update all of them. And I don't have to type it 6 times. See if I get the check for that. Hopefully I do, because the book did not do it in the same way as me. The book wrote all of it 6 times. Okay, we got the check for that. Very good. Moving along. Mobile hypertext and hyperlink styles. Sophia has placed hypertext links for the gallery's phone number and email address in a paragraph with ID links. I do remember seeing this phone number and email right here at the very beginning of the article. For mobile users, she wants these two hypertext links spaced evenly within the paragraph that is displayed below the top navigation list. To format these links, create a style rule that displays the links paragraph as a flexbox row with no wrapping, then add a style that sets the value justify content property to space around. Okay, so she wants this paragraph to be the flexbox, and then each of the links inside of it to be the flex items. And this is still that we're only doing mobile right now. So that paragraph had ID links, and it's going to be a flex box, display flex. That's all flex boxes are display flex. And she wants it set to row with no wrapping. So flex flow is row and no wrap. And I need the WebKit for each of these. And that should be almost it. We also have to do the justify content. We did that on an earlier Flexbox. We did center. This time we're going to do space around. And we checked the guide here. Center is what we did last time. We did that for the footer, the list in the footer. Now we're going to do space around. So we'll have space on the outside and space in between each of the items. Yeah, space around. Okay. So that's the first part of this instruction. She wants the telephone and email links to be prominently displayed. One second here. We're getting close to our break time. Okay. We're getting back to this. Let's finish this step up here. She wants the telephone and email links to be prominently displayed on mobile devices. For each element within the links paragraph, apply the following rules. So we need to make a rule that displays the link text in white on a background color of this color. And that's going to be some kind of a red color. Sets the border radius around each hyperlink to 20 pixels with 10 pixels of padding, and remove the underlining from the links. And we can do all this with one large rule here. So we want to be the same level of specificity because we targeted the Flexbox here and the Flexbox items here. We want to be the same level of specificity. Text color, she said, is white. We can type in white, or we can type in the hex value of that, which is FFFF, 6 Fs. And the background color, again, if we're only doing the background color, I highly recommend specifically typing background color instead of using the shorthand. Now that value is 220, 27, 27. Looks like it's some kind of red. And the little tip here that MindTap gives us shows me that I'm correct. It is a type of red. Next, the border radius, and the rule for that is just border radius. Border radius of 20 pixels. If you only give one value to border radius, it's going to be for all the four corners. You can give a different value for each of the four corners, starting with the top left and moving clockwise. So top left, top right, bottom left. Generally, when for border radius, for padding, for margin, for all of that, in CSS, it starts at the top or the top left. If it's a corner, it starts in the top left. If it's a side, like padding or margin, it starts at the top and it goes clockwise from there. So border radius of 20 pixels, which will mean each of the four corners will be 20 pixels, and 10 pixels of padding. Okay. Each of the four sides will have 10 pixels. And remove the underline from the links. The underline on a link is something called text decoration. And we have a bunch of options. We can do dash, dotted, double, line through, none, overline, solid, underline, and wavy. Underline is the default for links, and she does not want an underline, so we're going to say none. Text decoration is none. And that is this entire task right here. Something that I like to do if I have a lot of CSS rules in a particular thing is I like to order them in a particular way. Some of the options that you can do when you order these, a very common one is to simply order them all alphabetically. Background will go there, border will go there. So if I were to order these alphabetically, because now I have a lot of different things. When we did these before, there was just a lot of flex things, and I will put them all in whatever order. But these are a lot of different styles. And so I like to order them in a specific way. Alphabetically is one of the better ways to choose. That way, if you have a lot of CSS rules, and I've written CSS rules that have 10, 20 things in them, and if they're all jumbled up in some weird order, it's easy to overlook one or to get out of order and to do things wrong. So if you put them all in alphabetical order, that's a good way. Another order that I like to do is to break the different things apart by what they do. So things that are position and size in nature, I put all first and I group those alphabetically. Then I leave a space, and then I do all the CSS rules that address the text. So things like color and text decoration and font size. Then I do all those in alphabetical order. And then I leave a space, and then I do all the things that have to do with borders and radiuses and background colors, and put all those in alphabetical order. And then I leave a space, and there's a couple of things that kind of don't fit into any of those at the end. Z-index, for example, opacity. Opacity is kind of the same as background color, though. Usually it's Z-index or cursor will be in the other category. So you can organize them by category, organize them alphabetically, or some combination. But once you start getting a lot of CSS rules in here, please do organize them however you choose, so that they don't get, so you don't miss anything or forget one or put things in twice. That's generally not going to hurt you if you put things in twice. But if you put it in twice and then you change one of them, hopefully you change the one at the end, otherwise it's not going to work. So we've done that. Should get my checkbox. I'm going to have a look at the page, and then we'll take our break. A couple minutes early, but we're at a good place to stop. Oh, it did not accept it for me. Let's have a look at what the difference is. So this is mine and this is what it's looking for. Oh, and the problem is when I typed my CSS selector here, I typed the word link, but it's actually links. So I had a small typo there. That should do it for me. And that was it. That's all I needed. Small typo on my CSS selector, my ID tag. Let's have a look at what this page looks like now. Okay, so no change there. Here, these have now been spaced apart a little bit, and they have their white text, red background, and border radius. And if I change my screen size, all this kind of goes away because so far we've only been working with the mobile size. .3% difference. If you remember earlier, I had something at 1.7% difference and it did not accept it. So perhaps 1.5% is the maximum that they'll accept. It's just about our break time in a few minutes. I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so continuing on to the next page, we're getting pretty close to being done with case problem 3. We're moved on to desktop devices at the moment, which is good. So what MindTap has been having us do each time is use the same 480, 481 pixel mobile desktop cutoff point. So I'm going to copy and paste my mobile media query. Make sure I add my closing curly brace and make sure I change my values in here. I need to change the max to a min. That's very important. Otherwise, I'm going to create another mobile media query, and I need to change my 480 to 481 to prevent myself from having that 1 pixel overlap. And I see my file is red up here again. I got this red dot here, which means that my sandbox is not saving properly. And so I need to refresh my page. Hopefully MindTap does not erase anything for me. If it erased the last step, I can live with that. Just the thing that I just typed in right here. We'll take a second to reload. A few seconds. And looks like I have the same URL. Looks like all my code has been kept except the very last thing I just typed that didn't save. That is okay. So I'll type this in. All right, so I have my desktop media query. Whoop. Typo included. There we go. Fix that. Add media screen and a min width 481. So that means all screen sizes 481 and larger. Okay, this is the minimum width that I'm targeting. Okay, so there's my media query. And I have one rule to figure out how to write for this. It says Sophia doesn't want the links paragraph displayed for tablets and desktop devices. The links paragraph is, I think that's this paragraph that we just targeted. Yep. She doesn't want that displayed on tablets and desktops. I don't know why she wouldn't want the phone number displayed on there, but we can we can oblige her anyway. Okay, so it is ID links, and Sophia wants that not to be displayed on this size, so we'll just write display none for the ID links paragraph. Okay, we can write P because we know it's a paragraph. We can do that if we want to be more specific. That's actually what the book does. I prefer to just write the ID tag because ID tags alone are already very specific. All right, so I should have completed the first step, and the first step is simple enough. They just want us to make sure we get the correct media query and then one very simple CSS rule. Okay, so the next one, this is probably where we're going to have some difficulty. There's a lot of blue words in here for us to target different elements. Let's get started here. The page body has 4 children: the header, the footer, the article, and the aside. Okay. The article and the aside elements will share a row with more space given to the article element. Okay, so they're talking about a flexbox row now. Set the growth, shrink, and basis values. Did I skip something? No. Okay. Set the growth, shrink, and basis values of the article element to 2, 1, and 400. Set those same values for the aside element to 1, 2, and 200. So in order to do that, now they're kind of skimping on our instructions. They're telling us to make the article and the aside flexbox items, and they've told us that the body is the parent of that. So that means we have to make the body a flexbox, and we haven't done that yet. Okay, if I look everywhere in my style sheet, the body is not being told to be a flexbox. So we have to do that part first. Okay, we can't make flex elements, flex items. We can't make those without a flex parent or container. So the body is going to be the flex container, and that is display flex. And it's not telling us whether it wants to wrap or no wrap or row, but we can have to figure it out on our own that if we want the header to be on top, the footer to be on the bottom, and the article and the aside to be in the middle, we definitely want that to wrap because that's clearly there's things on top of each other. So we have to wrap with that. And we've pretty much always used row. It makes sense for us to use row for that. So we're also going to use row. Flex flow is going to be row wrap. And I'm going to copy and paste each one of these and then write WebKit in the first copy. So we have our WebKit extension settings. And now we actually have a flexbox, so we can set the grow, shrink, and basis for the article and the aside. I'll do the article first. Article, I don't know if there's multiple articles. I don't remember what it says in the HTML here. I only have one article and one aside. Okay, so I don't need to be more specific than that. And I'll just write flex. The values they've given us is 2, 1, and 400 pixels for the article. And do the WebKit prefix on that as well. And the aside is going to get the same treatment but different values. Flex 1, 2, and this one is 200 pixels. So let's copy the WebKit. So the article, that's the main content area of this section. We've set it to grow quickly and shrink slowly. And the aside, that's the smaller area, we've set it to grow slowly and shrink quickly. And we set the aside to start off by being smaller than the article. So now we're working on the desktop side, so I can turn off my mobile view and refresh my page. And we'll see that all these links that are at the top, we've not done anything with those in the mobile view. In the desktop view, we made those 6 cool icons with all different images. We're probably gonna have to do something with these in the desktop view. So I think here is the article and here is the aside. So the article is twice as big as the aside, which makes sense. We said the article should start at 400 pixels and then grow and shrink, and the aside should start at 200 pixels and then grow and shrink. So the aside is going to stay smaller. We have this cool image right here. I do want to inspect that and see how that's being done. So that image is actually being rotated with CSS. We've not done that at all in this chapter, and it is done for us. So if you're interested in how that's done, please have a look at the CSS there. It's got this transform with the translate Y, translate X, and the rotate. Really, the rotate is the only thing that is doing the rotate. The translate is actually just moving it, and then it's being rotated. And you can kind of see what's going on right there. Firefox does a pretty good job of trying to show us all these changes in this transform. So that's pretty cool. If you're interested in that, then go ahead and open that up and edit it. If you edit it in MindTap, please make sure that you put it back if you're trying to get the check marks, because if you change even something else that wasn't part of the assignment, if you change something else in the code, then it's not going to match up. So that's pretty cool. Let's go back and see if we can get the check mark for this. It looks pretty good. See if we can get completion. It's taking a while. Okay. Looks pretty good. I want to see what our percentage is. So they're testing a couple of different things there, huh? You have to test 0.09% difference. Looks like they're testing the aside on its own, and then they're testing the article on its own. 2.5% difference, and it's accepting it. I don't see the difference. We do want to be careful though, because any small errors can add up over time. But moving on to the next section, table navigation lists. For tablet and desktop devices, that's where we are. The top navigation list should be displayed as a horizontal row with no wrapping. Okay, so that's the same buttons that we did in the mobile size. In the mobile screens, we made all those cool background images. In the desktop, we're going to do a flex box with no wrap. Enter a style rule to display the top navigation list, unordered list, as a flex box with a background color of RGB 51, 51, 51, so that's a dark gray, and a height of 50 pixels. Use the justify content and align items property to center the flex items both horizontally and vertically. Okay, so we want the top navigation to be a flex box, and then we want to do something afterwards to the items. So I'll start with top, ID of top, and target the unordered list. That is where I'm going to put my Flexbox CSS rules. And then for the child elements, I'm going to be just as specific, add the list items to that. And that's where I'm going to write my style rules down here that have to do with the items. So first, the flex box, always display flex. They want us to do it as a horizontal navbar with no wrapping and direction being row. So flex flow is row, no wrap. Okay. This is going to force it all to be on one line, no wrap. And a background color of, they've told us what it's going to be, RGB 51, 51, 51. That's a dark gray. A height of 50 pixels. And also a justify content and an align items property to center the flex items both horizontally and vertically. So I think it's going to be justify content center and align items center. I'm going to check our guide here. Justify content and center is an option, and it makes the items centered. And scroll down to align items. If I want to center them vertically, it's going to be called center as well. And that is center vertically. So that's what I'm going to put in here. I'm going to put both of those commands exactly as MindTap has written for me. Justify content. Oop, I typed it wrong. Center. And then align items center. And correct my typo. You'll notice I have a lot of typos. I go back and forth between a lot of different computers, and every computer, if you use a lot of different computers, the keyboards are like a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch different. And it doesn't sound like much, but your muscle memory and your fingers and typing really get affected by that. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So this is all of what they told us to do in this paragraph. I'm going to go back through and add all the WebKits prefixes for all the flex settings. And you'll see the shortcut that I'm using is the WebKit versions are the same settings as the normal versions. So I'm copying and pasting them, and then I'm just adding dash WebKit dash. Dash WebKit dash. I could even copy and paste that and paste it in there as well. So that's a lot in there. Most of this is WebKit, and the ones that aren't, I'm actually going to put a space and put them down below. So future me, if future me ever had to come in here and adjust things, I have a bunch of WebKit settings in one section and then everything else in another section. And then I can more easily make any changes in the future if I ever wanted to. So the second half of this is to do those CSS rules for the children elements and define the flex size of each list item in the top navigation list to have a maximum width of 80 pixels, but to shrink at the same rate as the width if the navigation list is reduced. So it sounds a bit confusing. It says a maximum width of 80, but it's allowed to shrink. And it's this weird thing if it shrinks. And what they mean is we're not going to write maximum width. We're going to do our normal flex. And our growth rate is going to be 0. This way we can provide a maximum width. Our growth rate is 0. Our shrink rate is 1. And then we can put our maximum width as the basis. So what's going to happen is the basis is going to be the start of 80 pixels. And then if everything fits on the screen, 80 pixels is what's going to be. And that's actually the maximum width. If the screen is too small and it doesn't fit, it will shrink below 80 pixels if needed, but it will never grow above 80 pixels. So that's how we're going to get our max width of 80 pixels. On the opposite end, if they told us they wanted a minimum width of something and they want it to be able to grow, we can set the basis to whatever the minimum width is, set shrink value to 0, and set grow to 1. And then the items will be able to grow beyond whatever that minimum basis value is. So this, and I'm going to cheat just a little bit to make sure that we don't, about the WebKit version. Remember, we had that one error in MindTap today. So the answer key has the WebKit. I'm going to also use the WebKit. Looks like so far there's only been that one error. So that is the Flexbox items. And again, the way we got the maximum width is we set the grow rate to 0. So it will never grow past this basis. And so the basis will then act like a maximum width. Right, so I'll hit my check and see if I can get that taken care of. And as soon as that comes through, it was successful. We'll have a look at the page and see what the difference is. So before we put this Flexbox in, this top navigation is taking up a lot of real estate. This is like multiple pages of information just for these 6 links. And if I refresh the page, now these 6 links, there we go. This page takes a little while to load for some reason. But now these 6 links are showing up as one horizontal navigation, and the text is white by default. We've given it a background color, and when they hover over these items, let's have a look at the inspection. This isn't code that we put in. This previous was already done. If I right-click in the inspector on a particular item, I can go down here to change the pseudo class, and I can force it to stay hovered even when my mouse isn't hovered over it. And you see all these yellow dots and it says hover. And by doing that, I can see what the hover CSS rule is, and it shows down here, and I have hover visible. So when this is hovered, it's getting color changed and it's getting a text shadow added. A cool thing to note is a number of years ago, when I was still having to write code that was usable on Internet Explorer 5 and 6, when you put hover commands in, let's say in this example, the text is white by default, and then you hover and it turns red. I would actually have to specifically set the color to white when it's not hovered, and then set it to red when it is hovered. Because if I just left the color as the default, in the old Internet Explorer, when you hover and it changes the color and you stop hovering, it doesn't change back unless you specifically tell it to also change back. All newer browsers than that don't have that mistake in them anymore, but it's interesting to see that the older browsers had that mistake. It would change the color, and then it wouldn't actually change back unless you specifically told it to. So that is all, let's say, everything that they wanted us in the desktop view. The desktop view was much easier, I think, than the mobile view. Desktop view just had 2 flex boxes and hide some links. That was it. So we can continue to the last page. The last page is to, they want you to look at the page, which we just did. They want you to validate with the World Wide Web Consortium Validator. Remember, we're not doing that because the W3C validator has not been updated in a few years. When the MindTap book was written, it probably was much more up to date than it is now. But the book also has not been updated in a couple of years. And we can tell this by the WebKit prefix on all the Flex boxes. That is from when Flexbox was still new. And Flexbox is a few years old. So this book is a few years old. Probably because they don't want to rebuild their entire, they basically have their own browser built in that they're using for the comparison. And in order to update it, they have to rebuild that whole thing. So we finish this and get a complete final test of the complete web page. Hopefully that works. Been lucky most of the time. We did have an issue with that one step though. Okay, so that worked. I want to go back to that one step we had an issue with, and which page it was on. It's the one, an early page where we were working on the footer. Bottom, this one here, I believe. So I did not get checked off on it, and I was pretty sure that I did it right. And scroll back to where the code was to that. That's this code right here. I was pretty sure that I got it right. So I opened up this checkbox area that said I didn't do it right. And then I opened up the viewing panel and it showed my current page, what it looks like, and then it showed what the solution is intended to look like. And you could see that they were different. Okay, mine looked like this. Okay, and the reason mine looked like that and theirs didn't is because I zoom into that and I look at the UL. We have flex for the list items, or for the list itself, because we have 3 unordered lists in this bar, in this navigation area. The flex of the flex items, the child flex items, is set to grow of 0, shrink of 1, and a basis of 150. And that's what it looks like right there. That is how it's supposed to look. In MindTap, the browser that's built into MindTap that it uses to check this is a WebKit browser, and it does require the WebKit prefix on flex values in order to display properly. And for this particular step, and it's the only step I've seen so far that had this error, MindTap forgot to put the WebKit prefix, and so theirs is wrong. And the only way to get checked off on this is to also do it wrong, just like they did, and take the Flexbox parameter out of there. And so the way that I was able to see this is I can see that their code didn't look like it had the 150 pixels for the flex basis. It didn't look like it was doing that correctly, so I knew it was something that had to do with that. I also knew it was something that was in this one step that I just did, so it had to be in this much code right here. And so what I did is, I actually could see what it looked like in the answer key, and that confirmed my suspicions that MindTap forgot to put the WebKit prefix on theirs. So the only way for me to get it correct is to forget the WebKit version. So if that happens to you on perhaps the case review or in future examples, anytime you think you got it right and MindTap says it's wrong, have a look at these images and see if you can kind of figure out what's different between yours and theirs. It's not always going to be MindTap, okay? You guys are still learning, so it's expected that the mistake will be more likely to be your mistake, and that's perfectly fine. Even mine, usually it's me as well. Usually I had a typo or I forgot a step or something. But this case, it definitely was MindTap that was the issue. So I'll let you know if I see that that happens again, and I've written this one down so that I'll know about it in the future, and I can try and get that sent to MindTap. I doubt that they're going to update it because it's probably a lot of work for them to do it. But keep that in mind. Look at those images, and whether MindTap wrong or you're wrong, you should be able to, hopefully you can look at those images and try to figure out what the problem is, and you can debug your own code that way, okay? So hopefully this was helpful to you, and I've finished case problem 3. Now I'm going to go and submit it and confirm. Oh, I shouldn't have submitted it. It never saves it for me. It only saves it for you because my grades don't count. Okay, so that's done. I'll finish the recording and I'll process this and put it up on Moodle so that you can have a look at it on your own later on if you would like. And that's the end of that.